The time is now 5:30, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the April 19th meeting of the Board of Trustees. To start off today, we'll start with a moment of silence and the pledge to the flag, and I want to recognize our cadet today. Leading the Pledge of Allegiance in the Texas Pledge today is Midland High sophomore Brock Aparicio. Brock is a cadet in the Midland High JROTC. Brock has been awarded the Distinguished Unit Award, the Good Conduct Ribbon, the Activities Ribbon, and the Longevity Ribbon while in 2 years of JROTC. Brock has a course load of AP Chemistry, Algebra 2, World Government, Spanish 2, Athletics, and English 2 in addition to the JROTC. Outside of the JROTC, Brock enjoys powerlifting as a member of the Midland High School football team. After graduating high school, Brock plans on joining the United States Air Force, where he wants to specialize in security forces or combat control. Thank you, Brock, for being here. And now if you'll stand with me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Aparicio.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you, Brock. We appreciate you being here tonight, and he is going to exit because he has a football meeting with the Midland High School football coach tonight, so he is out the door. So we appreciate you guys being here tonight to honor our flags. The next thing on the agenda is presentations, recognitions, and awards. The first one listed is My Trusted Credit Union with a check presentation. Ms. Gamersfelder, welcome to the podium.
Thank you so much. Good evening, President Murray, Dr. Ramsey, Mr. Pounds, and board members. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to introduce to you Michelle Forrest from MCTU as an enthusiastic community member who's here to support the district and present a check that's going to be designated for district teacher appreciation and teacher support. Michelle Forrest.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. You members of the board, and of course Dr. Ramsey. We already love her completely. So we wanted to bring a check tonight, very large check. $21,000 is the starting check, though. We plan on having a lot more funds. So MTCU was originally Midland Teachers Credit Union, but now it is MTCU only. That is because in 2008 we received our community charter, and anyone that lived, worked, worshiped, or attended school could join the credit union. So educators have always been our strong base that we've worked with, and our heart is absolutely with our education system and our children because they are our future. So in approximately 2019, we spoke with Mr. Riddick, and he actually had the idea of the Spirit debit card. He asked us if we would be willing. We were already in the schools. So immediately we said, yes, please let us do this. So we went to work, and at this time we have a Midland High and a Midland Lee school debit card, and anytime someone chooses that as their debit card and they swipe their card for $15 or more, we give a portion of our profits to this fund. And then we pass this along to the education board, where it can be used for teachers, campuses, morale, and any other worthwhile purpose. It is just common sense, and it is just the correct way to consider that our educators and our children are very valuable, and every little tiny bit that we can get for them is important. Our goal is $1 million in 10 years. We are striving very hard to make this happen. So we wanted to present this check. All to have one, because if we all work together, that is more funds for the important ones in our community.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it, and thank you for being part of MISD and supporting our teachers. The next item on the agenda is public forum, and I have two speakers tonight. The first one is Don Talley, and the topic will be Community Literacy Program. Mr. Talley, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Ramsey, board. Who I am, my name is Don Talley. I've been a Midland resident for 37, almost 38 years. For 43 years, I was a petroleum engineer. I retired in March of 2020, and on the advice of a very good friend who told me not to do anything until I was comfortable doing nothing. I got that way. In October, I saw an article about the literacy program, the proposed community literacy program. I signed up, went through the training. What I do now is I work with children. I work with kindergartners, first and second graders who have fallen behind due to the COVID, due to other things. They are behind. I work closely with their teachers, with our campus interventionists. The kindergartners, it's sight words, it's phonemics, it's reading, it's some games that we play. First graders is the same thing, sight words, phonemics, games. Second graders, comprehension, details, and inferences drawn from text. What I've seen in the last 3.5 months, we have evolved children that I would see early in the program that needed help. Need your help. Now then, would you please work with this group? First grade, again, an evolving group. We have a group we meet in the hallways, or we meet in a small classroom and go over these things. We play phonics games and all of this other stuff. From this, I have gotten letters from teachers and letters from students thanking me for my help. I've seen an evolution in students from children that do not want to participate, children that are now participating, and they want to participate. One girl in particular didn't speak to me at all, and now I participate. This has been the last thing I can't see them. I'm not a professional educator. I'm a registered petroleum engineer, but I have not done anything in the last several years that equates to the excitement of seeing a kindergartner, eyes light up, head come back, sit up straighter in their chair, and realize, I got this. That is the most exciting thing that I can think of doing. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for this program.
Mr. Talley, thank you for what you do, and absolutely thank you for coming up here tonight and putting that out in the public so others might know what's going on, and we appreciate your work and service. The next person that wishes to speak is Brad Robertson, and it says it's for agenda item 8, personnel issues. And do you want to wait until that comes up? Okay. Just wanted you to know, because that'll be after closed session, so I just want to make you aware that it's going to be a little bit later. Okay, thank you, Mr. Robinson. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, item 4. A, board meeting minutes found on page 4. Monthly financials found on page 12. Item C, annual audit engagement letter found on page 24. Item D, investment officers resolutions found on page 35. Item E, quarterly investment report found on page 37. Item F, RFP 2033, on-call plumbing services and supplies found on page 52. Item G, RFQ 20-31, asbestos management plan and testing services, page 56. Item H, contracts over 100,000, page 59. Item I, TEAC certification for 2021-2022 found on page 61. Item J, personnel appointments found on page 64. And item K, board gifts found on page 70. Board, are there any reason why any of these items should be pulled from consent? Hearing none, those will be deemed approved. Thank you, Board. And I just do want to say thank you for our board gifts. The Walton Foundation, the Centos Corporation, and My Trusted Credit Union also gave another gift. And so we just want to say thank you for all of those gifts that we received as well. The next item is Agenda Item 5, District Presentations, and it's the academic update found on page 72. And our presenters tonight are Dr. Kell and Dr. Atkins. I'm not sure which one's coming first. Dr. Atkins, welcome to the podium. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, President. Good evening, President Murray, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Ramsey, and Mr. Pounds. I'm glad to share with you today a little bit about of an update on our reading academies. I want to share with you where we are right now with them, how they originated, what they are intended to accomplish, and what our steps are moving forward. So back in, seems a long time ago, June 2019, the 86th Texas Legislature, there we go, 86th Texas Legislature passed House Bill 3, which has become a very large piece of legislation, but through that, it indicated that all kindergarten through third grade teachers and principals should attend what we call a Teacher Literacy Achievement Academy by the end of the 2020-2023 school year. So that has become and evolved to be known as the House Bill 3 Reading Academies. And that's what we commonly refer to them as HB3 Reading Academies. And I'll refer to that throughout this presentation in that way. So a couple of things that I do want to share about Reading Academies regarding content, regarding our plans and moving forward. All of these Reading Academies have very specific, consistent requirements that are imposed upon by TEA. So the TEA has vetted the program. They have collaborated with a number of individuals who are very knowledgeable in the teaching of reading and the science of teaching of reading. The materials are all vetted through the Texas Education Agency, as well as the providers. The providers go through a very extensive process of vetting and application. And here in our locality, Region 18 is the provider of the reading academies that we are participating in. They serve as through a number of ways as facilitators of the course. So they are the ones who are providing the information to our teachers and to our administrators. They provide feedback on the modules that they submit and the artifacts that they submit. And they also track the completion status and report this completion status to the Texas Education Agency for record keeping as it impacts certification. So the reading academies attend to a number of things. Specifically, when we talk about the science of teaching of reading, we're looking at phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We know all those things aforementioned impact comprehension, and comprehension is the goal of reading. So that is the intent of this particular process. Like I said, we have all public school districts have until the end of the 2020-2023 school year to complete this requirement. So currently we have 203 Midland ISD teachers and administrators who are participating in this first cohort. It will conclude in June 2021. During the next two cohorts, will be over the next 2 years, we will continue to onboard those teachers who still have to participate in the House Bill 3 Reading Academies. One thing I would like to point out regarding the Reading Academies is that they require extensive amount of time, dedication, study, and preparation and homework. Our teachers and our administrators are doing homework. This is roughly around 60 hours of coursework, so it's very intensive. I am pleased to announce that we will be able to provide those who successfully complete upon the end of each cohort a $1,000 stipend. I know that's a drop in the bucket for the work that they have done, but it is something that we want to be able to continue to provide our teachers and our administrators, those who work with small groups of students, all of those who are required to participate in reading academies with that information and with that stipend. And at this point, I'll be glad to entertain any questions you may have regarding reading academies.
So are the reading academies online? Is that my understanding?
Yes, they are delivered through an online modality.
Okay, so the teachers can just get on when it's convenient for them and fits their schedule? And
Yes.
Is it self-paced or are there benchmarks where they've got to?
So there are benchmarks that the Region Service Center provides us so that people can make sure that they are on track to completing the course. Should an individual not complete the course, then they would have to go back and start all over again the next year. We don't want that to happen to any of them. So the Region Service Center has been very helpful with providing us that monthly update, and we're able then to update teachers and administrators as far as their progress in the course, which they can also access through Canvas, which is the LMS that the Service Center is using.
So about how long do they have to finish it?
They have the entire year.
Okay.
So they started in July, I believe, and they have until June.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Cowan?
I just wanted to comment at I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Mr. Talley, but I don't know if we can get him on the video communication-wise, but I think he'd be a great person to promote this further for Midland ISD. I was so touched by the fact that he's willing to come here and give us 3 minutes, and I was touched by it. I've heard a lot of people come up here and speak for their 3 minutes, and you did it. You knocked out your portion, expressing your views in such an eloquent way about the children, and that's the kind of thing that just enlightens my heart, brightens my face, because it's one of those moments that says, hey, we're moving forward and things are changing, and to hear that kind of positive talk, it's just so brightening.
Workshop, very process-oriented, as Engage to Learn helped us create an iterative process to come down to an idea of what our learning innovation framework should be across the district. As we looked at this, we wanted to make sure that we were refining our structures that can support PD that is job embedded and not a pull-out situation. We wanted to make sure what could we ensure created a transformational campus culture across the district and set standards not only for our students as learners but also for our adults. So as we went through that process, we created an ongoing platform that we will have to support that work toward improving student outcomes as we move forward. We came down to what our beliefs were, which I'm not going to read that to you, but you can see that it aligns greatly with what y'all have instituted as a district vision and mission. And then we created what is our call to action, which I will read because I think it's very important that all Midland ISD learners, adults and students, I'm going to add that in because that's important, will relentlessly pursue excellence as vital members of an ever-changing global community. And then we created our learning profile with the input of all the principals, which was extremely important to this process, about what we want a learner to look like in our district. And this will support the work as we move forward with Engage to Learn, not only through the Blended Learning Grant, although that's centered around 5 campuses, it is impacting all 40 campuses, and that we are proud of. Do you have any questions?
Forgive me, but would you expound a little bit on what Engage to Learn is?
Engage to Learn is a company that centers around best practices, not only in principal and teacher leader coaching, but also around campus culture and innovations of best practice towards student learning.
Okay. And so they come in, do the deal, and now this is the product, or these 3 columns. So will you just help me better understand how that impacts the classroom? So how does this get disseminated out beyond the people who attended, and how is it being implemented?
Sure, it's a longer process. It's not going to just happen overnight. We have already provided this information to the principals as participants in that, and then their job is to feed it out to the campuses. We also will be working diligently with the 5 campuses in the Blended Learning Grant, because this will be a big framework for what they do, and that's Alamo, Bonham, De Zavala, Jones, and Long. So they will be a big focus as we move through that Blended Learning Grant for the next 4 years. And then the best practices that we have there can create job-embedded professional development that can then go to other campuses. Other campuses can come see the work they're doing. We can take the work that they're doing with blended learning and push it out to the other campuses. So it's a small piece that will grow larger. It will not be an overnight process. It will take time, because you're talking about changing an entire culture and an entire way of doing things based upon these beliefs.
President Murray, if I may.
But you're not going to have audio for your recording. Turn that down. Raise her up.
So knowing already that we have a call to action that looks really similar to kind of a mission statement, and we have a learner profile that's very similar to what a profile of a graduate would be, and we thought it was value to get specific strategies.
They have to stop in the middle or something? Is that were they allowed to go back and start again, or is that?
Typically, when there's an issue like that, it picks up exactly where it left off. Okay, the majority of kids were able to finish the same day. Typically, when there's an issue like that, it picks up exactly where it left off.
There's something wrong with fucking this for shit. Do you want to turn one off? No, because they only hear the mics on here. Oh, okay. Why are these on blue? It was going crazy. Turn that down a little bit.
In identifying the conditions of our facilities so that we can develop plans to proactively address the identified needs. 2 members of that team, Steve Hafer and Mark Berg, are here with us tonight to present a summary of those results, and Mike Vermeen is with us virtually as well.
Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Ramsey, it's our pleasure and we're very excited to be here to talk to you briefly about the summary of the assessment that we've done on facilities. Just a little bit of history. My name is Steve Hafer. I'm a principal with Uppity. Also with me I have Mark Berg, who is also a principal with Uppity, and Mike Vermeen, who is our director of planning, is on virtually, and we appreciate you doing that for us this evening, because he has to be down in South Texas first thing in the morning, and so it's a little difficult for him to make the trip this time. So we appreciate that. Just a little couple of things before I hand it over to Mark. Mark has been kind of running the assessment, but I did want to touch on a couple of things. Also want to introduce the team overall that did this. We had about between 20 and 25 people running around your campuses, the 34 campuses that we did in the assessment for this particular project. Also, along with the Uppity team, we had admin Marco, who works with the district currently, was assisted with the assessment on the roofing on campuses that were done. Just a little, one quick touch is, I've been in doing educational architecture for over 28 years now. I've done a lot of assessments in my time, and so I wanted to touch base. As we looked at this facility, we were a little, I'll say, to be honest, we were a little nervous walking out and coming into this facility assessment. If you look at the 34 campuses that we assessed, 25 of the campuses are over 50 years old. And typical, within the industry, a life cycle for an educational building is stated at about 50 years. So you do have a lot of older campuses. As we walk through those and as you look at the report, there are a lot of items. You've got a lot of professionals looking at things. There's things that were identified. There are a lot of items that were pointed out. Not a lot of them are necessarily critical or big issues to address. There's a lot of small ones in there too. So I want to make sure that you and the public understand as you look at this information and as we begin to digest it with the administration, that this is a process that we go through to look at this and make sure that we don't miss anything and we able to talk about the conversations of where the district needs to look at in a long-range plan. As we look at the facilities and we walk through them, and I walked several of the campuses, including the freshman centers and several of the elementary schools. All the comments that I got back, considering the age of your facilities are in pretty good shape. And I think that goes a long way in saying that for the age of your facilities, that your maintenance and your upkeep over the years have done a very good job at that. I want to make sure that that's understood in this conversation tonight. When we walk through and we look at, you start to see numbers, you start to see efficiency items that are listed. I want to make sure that it is understood that for the size of the district that you are and the age of your facilities and what we saw is very comparable to what we see around the state of Texas. So there's nothing unusual in your facilities that we've seen in any of the deficiencies that were analyzed about and that you will see in the report itself. So I want to say very much kudos to your maintenance and your staff for maintaining the facilities that you have. I'd also like to say thank you to Kelly and her group, particularly David Ramirez and Tony Guzman, for their hard work in making sure that we could get into the buildings at night after the students had left and walk facilities, that we had keys to all the spaces and all the plans to be able to develop the information that you're seeing in the report. So thank you very much for your time. I'm going to hand it over to Mark.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you both for allowing us some time to come here and do a presentation. I'll get the weeds here a little bit with everyone. We'll talk about the assessment and what we call boots on the ground and what we did. So we'll talk about a quick overview. We'll talk about the cost of compares the deficiencies to the overall replacement of the campus. People will pass back in the library analysis and talk about what we call UTC funds, which are utilization, Tda, and passing funds. So we're up to the commission by Midland ISD, and we did a condition assessment of 34 campuses, and that equals about 3,166,000 square feet were observed and assessed. In addition to that, we had a chance to talk with staff, facilities, and things like that to kind of uncover additional items, not always the one our grants received, but they're kind of the eyes and ears of these buildings who incorporated their views of efficiencies within the report as well. So the facility assessment is a written report outlining visually observed physical conditions of the space. As Steve mentioned, it's not just us two and Mike and see virtually. There's a whole team, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, engineering, building, architectural, and civil. This report is just looking at the efficiencies only. addition, the MTC utilization Tda capacity analysis was conducted, and we'll talk about that later as well. As you can see, your campuses, there's a 34th being observed. What did we look at? Easy to say everything. What can we see visually? We're looking at accessibility and how exactly that is. Are there ramps? Is there rising around the building? Are there ambulances? Are toilet stalls the right size for wheelchair access? We're looking at site conditions. Are they actually over?
I'm guessing it says corridor camera and settings. We just passed it through here.
Slowly the right pressure.
It's going through there, yeah.
Yeah, bypassed it.
Just going to be careful about what you're thinking. It's
interior walls, installation of windows, facilitating or building. Looking at the roofs, there's actual signs of concrete block or leaks. Looking at floors, ECT, carpet, terrazzo, wood, whatever you have. Doors, for example, is a hardware accessible or is it outdated? It needs to be upgraded. Looking at lockers, millwork, a lot of these are expanded jail conditions, or you can tell when something's old, it needs to be replaced. Our lockers rusted out and hard to turn them on. Other things, ceilings, technology, mechanical, looking at equipment and controls, electrical, looking at lighting and power. Are we upgraded to LED lights? Do they need to be upgraded? Also, plumbing fixtures, toilets, windows, sinks, and things like that. There's a lot of stuff we're looking at. So, how do we do this? We use a technology called BIM 360. We're not out there with a pencil and paper writing things down. We have our phones or our tablets, and we log in what school we're at. And this is all logged onto the cloud. We're at Santa Rita, for example. Log in where we're at. As the team is assessing, we have a floor plan. We kind of mark the location where we're at. We put an issue.
Hey, can you hear him?
And describe the location we're at, what the issue is.
No, I'm talking about out there.
So this is an example.
Yeah, but almost
Santa Rita. And it tells you within this report, there's 240 items that are deficiencies.
Can you hear him right now? Or does that mean?
There's approximately 300 deficiencies in those each one. So that's over 10,000 deficiencies. Now, that doesn't mean anything bad. That's pretty average. It ranges from cracks in the tile to crack foundation, investigation. And again, that deals with priorities. We're not looking at priorities right now. We're just looking at what the issues are. We're getting to priorities there. It takes a long time. So within this PDF that we delivered, we have a contents page, and you click on each particular deficiency. We bring you to what the issue is. And here it says a non-compliant ADA ramp, handrail steps, and things like that. So you're where this is at in the next year, and I'll also show you pictures for the stage staff. They want to fix for maintenance list. They say, here's a part of it. You need to fix this one. This is a part of the safety issue. So that we prioritize. So this is an example of one out of 10,000 along with that, we have a separate spreadsheet. Sort by location, which building, and sort by, as we saw in the previous slide. I want to look at all the walls of the property, so all the doors, or the roofs, or the HVAC systems. So that makes it a little easier to navigate through all these deficiencies. We also have kind of a summarized report. I don't care about this crack ceiling tile. Tell me what it costs to fix this building. I don't need to get this at all. And we'll get into that right now with some cost summaries, looking at what it costs for these deficiencies, or deficiencies total, or what it costs to replace the school. And with that, I'll let Steve kind of talk about that.
Okay, first slide here is basically the breakdown of the items, the deficiency items noted additional items. If there were soft costs associated with it, like we needed to go and hire a design team to actually design something to fix one of these. This is looking at that specific item and saying, in this region, this is what it costs to fix that item. And then they're added up. So that, and then this is just a summary looking at that. So district-wide, out of the 10,000 items that we had, there's $266 million worth of items that were associated and described within the assessment itself. And then this is what we look to evaluate, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. We look at replacement costs because ultimately, when you start looking at a facility, you start trying to define ultimately, is it worth or is it a value to the district to make that investment to repair a facility versus the cost of replacing the facility. Now, and so these are the costs for replacing the 34 facilities. And I want to make sure everybody understands as they look at that. This is not a replacement cost to say, if you were to go out and want to replace, say, Midland High School. This number is not the cost to go out and build a new high school. This is looking at the square footage that was assessed in the building and what would it cost in today's dollars to replace that piece right there. Now, as you start looking at replacement costs, as you look at all the information in the assessment, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. There's a lot of factors that go into making that decision and looking at what we decide to make a replacement. And the way we do it, it's usually about at that 40%. If the efficiency list is about 40% or more of the replacement cost, that means it's a point that you want to start having a conversation. If it's below that cost, most of the time what we would be doing is recommending to probably look at making a renovation cost to each one of those campuses. But there's a lot of factors that go into the decision of when you decide to do a replacement of the facility. There's a lot of things that are not defined in the assessment itself. This is a visual walk. We're looking at that. As we dive deeper into it, if they're above that 40%, we want to have that conversation. Then we start looking at it with the district a little bit deeper because some of the things that we did not get up and scope the plumbing pictures. We do not fully understand or know, we did not scope the underground plumbing. When you get into buildings 50 years and older, there's a lot of things that will take place that it still might not be of value to long term if you sink that amount of money in those are all conversations. This assessment at least gets us to the point to say that maybe we need to step back, take a look at these buildings and make that determination. So that's what I just want to make sure when everybody looks at this, because I know y'all looked at the bond program and obviously the number we're showing in there compared to what you had in your last bond program to replace to do your high school is significantly less. It came up in the facilities committee conversation today. That they're totally two different numbers because, like I said, this doesn't have inflation built into it. This doesn't have contractors who would make a project out of this. Their overhead and profit assigned to that cost. And it doesn't have the design and software costs associated. Also with the middle schools and high schools, we did not include, they're not included in here the athletic facilities associated with that. So this is just building to building. Because the only way we can truly assess and look at the efficiency cost to what you currently have and what it would cost to replace that to make sure we're looking at an apples to apples comparison. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. Okay, I think Mike is going to try to talk about these slides. These are moving into the comparisons and some of the utilization.
Get it. Everything was working just fine. Testing the service.
Thank you, Steve. Why? I'm sorry, I'm going to take a step back here. As soon as I came on, the PowerPoint presentation went away. There we go. Okay, fantastic. So what we're looking at here is the comparison that Steve was just actually talking about in terms of looking at the cost of efficiencies and comparing that to your replacement values. So we just want to give you guys a good visual in terms of what those efficiencies, how they match up to the replacement values. So we do that in a couple different ways. Here you see the bar chart and obviously the color coding with the darker efficiencies on top, the replacement values on bottom. This is looking at your freshman and senior high schools. We can go to the next slide. And this is looking at your elementaries. Obviously, it's the same scale, but obviously your elementaries are going to be a lot smaller, simply because of the square footage, right? When we're looking at the replacement value. And so on the next slide, what you'll see is the percentage, right? So we turned it into a factor for you that's a little bit easier to understand, and also just easier to have conversation around. So we divide essentially the efficiency cost by the replacement value to give us a factor to discuss when it comes to that question of replacement versus renovation. Next slide. All right, and so we also provided an opinion of those replacements. You'll see those three there: freshman high, senior high, and Midland High School, and various reasons why we came to that conclusion. There are several deficiencies in there that might add up to several dollars, and might actually impact a lot of campuses. And so that type of deficiency plays a factor in that opinion, but also looking at that objective deficiency to replacement value. Go ahead and go to the next slide one. So after looking at costs, what we also did is put together a capacity analysis, right? And so the idea is to understand exactly how many students you can expect to teach within each of your campuses. So you'll see a campus analysis here. Anything that is in red is showing that, as you see on the right, is showing that you have functional capacity that is lower than your current enrollment. And so just to explain, we have four columns there. You have a max capacity, which is essentially your number of classrooms times 22 or 25 students. But in the practical world, there's a functional capacity of the students moving one room to another. And so that's a factor of about 70% at your high schools, 75%, 80% at your junior highs, and 90% at your elementaries. And that's an industry typical factor that we use. And then you'll see your enrollment as of 2019. We took 2019 because it's the last time that we had that was not skewed due to COVID numbers. So we feel that's probably a more accurate number to use. And then again, the final column on your right is looking at functional capacity, right? The practical number of students that you can likely teach with capabilities, comparing that to enrollment. On the next slide, we also provide a dining analysis, right? So how do your larger spaces, dining room, library, will be next as well. But just looking at the size of your cafeterias, how many students can you actually expect to have in there? Does that actually meet your core capacity? And so again, on the very far right, what you're going to see is the maximum number of students that you can put inside of the cafeteria at one time, given the number of lunches that you have, and comparing that to your functional capacity. In red, essentially, in the case of the cafeteria, is a little bit small compared to the number of lunches that you have. The next slide is going to look at your numbers.
I'm sorry. How does that, what if they don't over the year and got on through campus and never added on to the dining hall or other spaces
High schools are usually in that 40 to 50 minutes for lunch. We've seen some push that down. And there's a lot of factors that go into place. And this is not unusual to see, TDA. And when we're looking at dining and we're looking at the library space, those are considered core spaces to a campus. And it's not unusual to have schools added onto in the past to add additional classrooms and capacity onto the school without increasing and taking a look at it. Now, depending upon when the additions and stuff were done, the TDA guidelines have changed throughout the years. And I can't sit here and say, were they in compliance at that point? We're looking at what you have on a square foot basis of available space, based upon what the current TDA requirements are right now. And that's the information that we're providing. You also currently in your high schools, you have one lunch. So you have a super lunch. You can do multiple lunches. We usually see most campuses try to do 2 to 3 lunches, but no more than that. We have had campuses that have gone up to 4, and we even had some that have done 5 and shortened it. And a lot of it also depends upon the capacity of the kitchen. It's not as we look at the dining space, but also as you look and you add on to it, is the kitchen still capable of providing that many lunches in an hour time period? And that's usually how a food design professional looks at it. They look at the space and how many lunches they can serve in 1 hour period. So,
and this is a very important matter because, kids have to have time to eat, to be fed correctly, instead of the school having to work around the lunch hour, having time to educate the kids, except, starting through there. Like I said, some kids have to be cured and end up hungry before they get back home. So.
And that could be something, obviously, as we continue to look, and we run across those conversations with staff and administration, that we would definitely want to take a look at. There's a lot of factors that play into that. The size of the kitchen, also how many serving lines you have, how many kids can you just physically get through the serving line. We've had issues where we've had to come back, and if we weren't able to completely build a new serving line because they only had one serving line, we look into the cafeteria spaces. It's cheaper to add cafeteria space and find a way to put in a portable serving line to help get the kids through the lines faster. We've experienced that in some campuses in the past where it takes too long for the kid. By the time a kid gets through the line, his lunch is almost over.
I appreciate that. It's
very good point.
It's something that happens on our campuses.
I just told everybody else in college.
I've been aware of it for now, for my years.
Be safe. Already back? You better go get a spare tire. Now why can't this dude turn around?
Okay. If we can move to the library slide. And so, again, similar to your cafeterias, we're looking at the library. Again, it is sized according to TDA standards. Again, if you see anything in red, it's going to be indicating essentially that you can accommodate less students or that the building is undersized. And I want to point out specifically right here what you're looking at. If you see a lot of red and give you a lot of concern, that you don't. It's pretty typical across the state to see a lot of older campuses that simply didn't have library It's kind of I'd say a complex equation for how you come up with the square footage, or the way the TDA came up with the square footage for a library. But a lot of times what we see is two classrooms that used to be classrooms. You take the middle wall out, and that serves as the library. And that's a pretty typical renovation for elementary or junior highs. The high school library as well, as your capacity gets larger, the library itself needs to be larger, and they simply weren't designing libraries that large prior to TDA standards when they came out in 97 and then again updated in 94. So what you're seeing is not atypical, but those are the numbers for you, and so we want to provide that. And then on the rest of the report, you can go to the next slide there, Mark. What we wanted to do is illustrate exactly how we come up with these capacities. And we call it the utilization TDA capacity report in that order simply because that's how you want to approach it. You want to identify first how your rooms are being used today. You can imagine, like I just talked about the library scenario, if two classrooms were taken up as libraries now, those classrooms no longer exist. Similarly, there's a lot of classrooms out there that buildings that used to be classrooms, and now all of a sudden they're teacher's lounge or a music room needs that weren't identified before. And so that affects the number of students you can actually have in the building. And so we look at the utilization first, then we look at TDA standards for construction and use that as a measure to decide how many students space-wise can be taught within a room. TDA has a square foot per student. And so if you're at the high school level, it's 28 square feet per student. And so we provided this sample that you see on the left there to illustrate the tiered number of students versus that 28 square foot increment. And so you'll see that for science labs. There are different rules for science labs and all of your other facilities or all of your other rooms as well. Life skills, I wanted to point out, generally there's kind of a typical cap at 12. That's not TDA prescribed, but it's very typical across all the districts that we work with. And so we thought that at 12, regardless of the size of the rooms, because you still have that population of students that you need to serve. And then what you see on the right side of the bottom there, that is our typical graph we use actually internally to show or to illustrate TDA's rules or square footage guidelines. So that's there for your reference as well. We can go to the next page. What you'll also see throughout that summary is a campus information sheet for each of your elementaries. And that's what I'll go through real quick in the next 4 slides is just what you're going to see for each of your campuses as you go through the summary. But your information page will give you the year it was built, size, acreage, and that kind of thing. That's okay, Mark. Go ahead and go to the next one. Thank you. You'll also see a cost summary, basically breaking down the cost that you saw from the district-wide summary at the beginning as Steve presented. This is showing you the components within each of the campuses. And so you see on the left there your facility total, cost per square footage, facility age, facility size. Below that, you have a bar chart showing your cost by efficiency type and then an illustration of it on the right-hand side as well. You'll see that utilization plan in that first step in calculating how many students you can have, but we want to graphically show you the color-coded floor plan so you can see how rooms are used today. On the next slide, you'll see a Tda Compliance, so now that we know how the rooms are used, do they meet the square footage requirements that TDA has for different spaces. And so anything in red is going to be non-compliant, gray is compliant. And then given that, and using that square footage per student, and identifying which rooms are your typical homeroom, quote-unquote, classrooms that you use to calculate capacity, we show you which rooms we actually used to calculate capacity at each campus. Anything in your darker blue, that's your non-union library, so that's your core. And then the final slide is a explanation, essentially just showing you the numbers of the classrooms that we have. So you see your classrooms for K first, you have 6 that are at the 800 minimum square footage. That's TDA prescribes for that. You fit 22 students in there, and so you get the maximum number of students out of that, and then functional capacity at 90. You'll see there are two rooms in red that are lower than 800 square feet. They fit in the category just below 764, so it's less students. All of that adds up to your max and functional capacity there. Your functional capacity total is 653. One thing to point out with this too is that at elementary level, your fine arts and your gyms, your specials essentially, those don't usually get counted in the capacity at the elementary level because those are breakout rooms. Students go there during the teacher planning period, and essentially, because the teachers do need that planning period, that room is unavailable, right? But at junior high and high school, that's not necessarily the case. Those are scheduled rooms, especially as you get into, it's not just specials anymore, but you might be getting into CTE type courses, and you have teachers at those stations as well. And so you'll see those eventually in junior high and high school calculated or factored into the capacity calculation. And that concludes it on my end. Steve, over to you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. So basically this, what we're showing you this evening, this is just a little snippet. The assessment summary report is actually 316 pages long. We didn't think y'all wanted to go through that page by page this evening. So this was just a highlight of some of the information that is available in the summary report. And then also, of course, the detailed information and the individual items are provided to Ms. Spencer and her staff as we begin to take a look at the next step in working out where do we proceed forward with this information and what is the best look at how to address some of the issues. Do these issues need to be pulled out and looked at in a long-range plan, and also allowing the district to take that information and start to look at some of the maintenance within their maintenance plan, how to include some of those items to make sure that they're getting addressed and pulled off as the district proceeds forward. So with that, I will open it up for any questions that y'all might have.
So in reviewing this ahead of time, it's my understanding that when we're talking about replacement costs, that it is to replace the building as it sits today. Correct? To go back in the exact same square footage, and that's how we're comparing apples to apples.
That's correct. That's looking at, for instance, that's looking at Lee High School, I'll say is 372,000 square feet. That's what you currently have at Lee High School. And that's replacing that 372,000 square feet. That's not looking necessarily at a new high school. That is looking at that square footage and that replacement of that square footage. Now, I can tell you that as you start to look at projects, my guess is based upon, I don't know what size high school you're looking at right now, but I'm looking right now, your campuses are at, between 22 and 2,300 students, I think, in 2019. So if you were looking at a 2,500 student high school to accommodate, say, let's point at this very standard size, a 2,500 student high school would probably be in the range, what we've seen typically is about 450 to 500,000 square feet for a school of that size, a building of that size, not including the athletic we've seen is in the pre-K, kindergarten, they've all disappeared. And I think a lot of it's been they've gone to different options or they've kept them at home. So we've seen a lot of numbers drop, but across the board we've seen drops all across the state. So it's not unusual. That's the reason it's very hard to use your current numbers as we look at that to try to say where, and then looking at your demographic study. We look at your demographic study and where it shows that you're going to continue to grow from where you were expected to grow from that point. So now we're trying to pick back up and see where we're going from there.
My last question was, in looking at the charts on the specific campuses, I can understand a lot of the different, categories of mechanical, HVAC, that kind of stuff. But there's one that's considered general or typical condition category. Can you give me an example of something that falls into that category? Because the other ones seem self-explanatory, but at Midland High specifically, I think, if I'm correct, that was one of its largest portions.
Yes, it's known as a general condition. Let's say I'm looking at a door that has a pull doorknob at 11. I'll state the fact that there's this deficiency, the issue is this door has a lot of arcing. So this is typical throughout the original building. So we stated once, and then we quantify that, just say general condition. We're able to quantify that, which portion of the building has this type of door that are not on doors.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a catch-all,
Yes.
and that's why Midland High seems to be bigger, is because it's older and it has the most deficiencies. It is the oldest. Thank you.
Mr. Marcus. So none of the asides for capacity, functional capacity, none of the sites, portable buildings at any of the sites were not included in functional capacity.
We were looking at just the bill with, and as we started looking at that, and we asked, did we really want to look at it? And, in a perfect world, we would like no portables. So we're looking at just the building. Now, as we go back and look at it, if we have buildings, and we look at a particular campus, as we look at the long-range plan, we might come back and say, okay, well, the full portables, they're not going away. Let's look at that and what the impact of that is. But as we started looking at it, like I said, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have portables, but we know that's just, it's a natural occurrence, and especially in a district that fluctuates and has to address growth quickly at certain times, it's not unusual. But that's how we started, and as we discussed it with the administration, how we wanted to look at the assessment.
So, for example, the last question earlier, if you have 4 or 5 portables outside, those numbers didn't affect the library and the bus?
Well, we looked at it from what is the building capacity, and we looked at it. So if there's, I'd have to ask Mike on this, did we include, we took the numbers from the district, so that the kids were counted, but we're looking at it from the library and the cafeteria based upon the total number of students that are currently at the campus. So if it's looking at that, it should show that it's most likely in red, because you've got too many students, even though they're, for the core capacity, and the portables could be driving some of that impact. And that's what, as we looked at it, now we have to go back and kind of take a look at it and have that conversation with staff.
Thank you.
Board other questions? I think Mr. Marcus' question is really good because it also draws out when we talk about those portables while we may be utilizing that to cover our enrollment and our student needs, may drive those
looking like these massive deficiencies when you're looking at, our libraries and obviously dining halls and then also into our classrooms and such. But it's not necessarily that they're unusable spaces where they're unsafe, but they're just grandfathered in and predate guidelines.
Absolutely.
So they don't have to be necessarily addressed, they would be ideally addressed.
That is correct. There's no specific mandate by TDA. Now, there are actually a couple of mandates that TDA makes, but they're very few on certain requirements. And most of them are recommendations. And as you move forward, there's new guidelines from the TDA that are going to be coming out that actually pull back and give more flexibility. As you've seen campuses and learning environments change over the last few years, you've seen more of this collaboration space start to appear in campuses, and you've started to see campuses grow in size to create these spaces. Well, the TEA has recognized that, and in their upcoming numbers, they're looking at not necessarily square foot per classroom, but square foot per student within the overall encompassing building to try to make sure that as districts are utilizing, as you stated, always open spaces, any place they can find becomes a learning environment. And we're trying to take more advantage of those spaces that aren't utilized, during the classroom period of the day, to try to make sure that you're getting your best bang for your dollar. You've seen designs and stuff start to address that, and the TDA has recognized that. And so I think there's a lot of good things. There are some things that are coming out relative to safety and security that they have some pretty strong recommendations that will impact some designs in the future. And so, but we're still waiting. I think those should be coming out, I believe, this year in the fall. So this is something that we will, once we have them in hand, we will begin to start taking a look at and see if it can impact it.
Just saying, one of your last comments, you said the next phase is to deal with discipline and ranking, and you'll start developing the disciplines. Is that what you said?
That's going to be part of, as we move forward, this is kind of the first step in the long-range plan. We have to be able to look and see what you have basically within your inventory, and where are some of the needs, and then we can sit down now with the district, start looking at not only developing a maintenance plan and what items we can pull out, but start looking at projects and how those projects could potentially be addressed and what could be the options to be able to have some deeper conversations with administration and with the board as to what is the best way to address some of the needs that you might have.
If it's possible to have, one thing that's very important, I think, to every parent is security. And it was a big talking point at the Gale Con, and I do think it's something that regardless of how you felt about the con, you acknowledge that everybody wants safety and security. So as a mom and a board member, I'd like to know a little bit more about the security piece in y'all's mind. I don't know if that comes from Ms. Spencer or Dr. Ramsey, or how we go about just understanding in comparison to other districts and the age of our buildings and everything, where do we kind of stand up against the threshold of what's acceptable and unacceptable when it comes to security? That's just something I'd like to see as we move forward, and maybe before we necessarily get to the priorities, just what I was trying to do.
Well, and it needs to be part of a comprehensive long-range plan because and the district working with their security team and making sure we understand the direction of the district. Because every district is different. How they handle safety and security in every district is different.
tonight. We appreciate your work tonight and being here. We look forward to the work that's going to happen with Spencer and Kingdom with our facilities committee as they all come together and try to pull these priorities together for us so that we can nail Mr. Dodds down and tell him, give us some of that money. So we appreciate you guys, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Board, the next item on the agenda is item 6, district reports. A, superintendent update, which is found on page 83. Item B, chief of staff update, which is found on page 85. And item C, staffing update, which is found on page 87. Is there any reason or any question that the board needs to ask one of those people to come to the podium and speak? Very good. The time is now 6:49, and we will move into closed session for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney on any and all subject matters authorized by law under section 551.071 and section 551.074 for the purpose of considering appointment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of public office or employee. And there will be action items when we come back from closed session, and so I just want to let you know that we do have extensive reports, so it may take a little while, but the board will be back in session at that point. Thank you for being here. The time is now 8:24, when the board is coming out from executive session. The next item on the agenda is actions arising from closed session. And we have Mr. Brad Robertson that would like to address the board on agenda item 8, personnel issues. So Mr. Robertson, welcome to the podium.
Thank you for your time. Like I said, my name is Brad Robertson. I'm here to I understand that one of the agenda items is to terminate the contract with Counselor Ms. Floyd, and I'm here to speak in her defense. Ms. Floyd has worked at MISD since July. She's not had any disciplinary issues until after she had filed a formal complaint against a co-worker for unprofessional conduct towards a student. Since that time, she's had numerous issues with her administration, and all this happens within 90 days of her filing that complaint. That is prima facie evidence of retaliation. I'm here to make this board aware of the harassment, the gender discrimination, and the retaliation against Ms. Floyd. Ms. Bailey and the current superintendent are well aware of these issues. And I think they're well aware of these issues in this behavior from this district. And the question is, is the board going to be consistent in these issues? I believe Ms. Bailey has framed the disciplinary issues with Ms. Floyd in a self-serving manner, and that has excluded exculpable evidence of Ms. Floyd's behavior from any disciplinary hearing. The one-month investigation that interviews over 40 involved parties in this issue has led to no evidence of misconduct that Mr. Bailey is trying to coerce Ms. Floyd into resigning her contract. I want to make the board aware of this before y'all make any decision on her continued employment here.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. All right. And I'm going to, we may have questions.
Number 5.
Item number 8A, discussion of possible approval of employee contract renewals, extensions, term of probationary administrators, and non-certified administrators, and authorize superintendent issue contracts. Would we have a motion? Do we need Mr. Bailey to present anything? 8.1 is term and renewal contracts, on page 91. I have a motion. I have a motion by Mr. Marquez, second by Mr. Trischetti, to approve item 8A1, term and renewal contracts. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. The vote is unanimous. Item 8A2 is probationary and dual contracts. Do I hear a motion? I'll go with Mr. Trischetti this time, and second by Mr. Marquez, if that's okay. Any discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the probationary and dual contracts found on page 95, please raise your right hand. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 8A3, administrator, non-certified term contracts found on page 98. May I have a motion? Mr. Booker moves. I have a second. Ms. Joyner seconds. Any discussion on administrator, non-certified term contracts? No discussion. And all in favor, please raise your right hand. That is also unanimous. Thank you. Item 8B, discussion of possible approval of superintendent's recommendation to terminate the 2020-2021 probationary contract with Counselor S. Floyd at the end of the current term.
President Murray, I'd just like to let the board know that you can go back into closed session and discuss personnel issues at this time if you want to. That's an option for the board, and you can come back out and do it.
From what I understand, the government code, the person that is part of this discussion has an option to request an open meeting. Has Ms. Floyd been given that option?
She has to follow the formal grievance process, I think is what you're referring to. And so she can grieve all the way up to 11-3, which is what the board, and that can be an open hearing if she so chooses. But my understanding is that she hasn't filed any formal grievance at this time, and I think Mr. Bailey can confirm that.
I guess I have a clarifying question, Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Robson, let me just make clear, I need to recognize you, and so until you're asking the question, you've had your 3 minutes, and that's up. So I want to be courteous to you, because I appreciate you staying here and hearing from us. But I just need to recognize you for this speech. Let's get the question from Mr. Trischetti before.
Questions for you, you may tell us that it can be discussed in office, but specifically to the items that were discussed in the executive, as far as her complaint or grievance that she had filed on campus, is that something that could be elaborated on in open session, or does council recommend that as a process?
So is that a board request? Or
as far as I'm any knowledge of a formal grievance filing, there has not been one at this time, even though on several occasions this photo was made aware of the process.
I'm sorry, specifically about the perceived retaliatory nature of the behavior, the original filing that precipitated that?
I think of all of these, the events that acknowledge are personnel related, so they would be protected.
Mr. Robinson, I'm not sure how you're related to this, but I would like if you have something to add.
Hello.
You need to add that at this time.
I'm pretty good. How you doing?
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I do have a question related to the council.
Yes.
I'm not sure we're in the proper context to be discussing the report on this and salary fiscal representative. Is that a fair statement?
Could you repeat that again? Sorry.
For us to be in a discussion about an employee, my person is saying representative.
Anyone has a right to provide public comment, so I don't see any issue with that, but I think if we are going to discuss this matter further, we should go into closed session under 55107-4 to discuss employee
Yeah.
issue.
No, I totally understand. Okay.
Do I have a motion either way from the board?
Okay.
So I go into executive, is that go back, or is it just one request?
No, as you see on the agenda, we have the option during the course of the meeting to go into closed session if something is necessary to discuss in closed session. This is
I'm just not too sure on the price.
we don't need a
So
formal vote.
I can when I get off work, I'll go ask my brother. And, yes.
So we just need to know the time and the section and what we're discussing.
Okay, the time is now 8:34. We'll move back into closed session according to section 55107-4 for the purpose of considering the appointment, evaluation, assignment, duties, discipline, and dismissal of public officer. Thank you. 8:39, we're emerging from closed session, second closed session. And do I hear a motion? Let me go back. We're at item 8, action arising from closed session, discussion of possible approval of superintendent's recommendation to terminate the 2020-2021 probationary contract with Counselor S. Boyd at the end of the contract term. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I make a motion that we take the superintendent's recommendation.
I have a motion by Mr. Bishop, a second by Mr. Excuse me. Mr. Bishop, would you rephrase the motion?
Yes, I move to terminate the 2021 probationary contract of Counselor Susan Floyd at the end of the contract term. As doing so is in the best interest of the district, and further move to authorize the superintendent to provide the employee written notice of this board action in accordance with law.
Mr. Marquez, would you wait for 1 second as amended? A second, any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand and signify approval. It is unanimous, thank you. That is the last item on the agenda tonight, and so we will adjourn at 8:41. Thank you.